Welcome back, everyone, for another episode of the Kickstarter Weekly. This week's episode is going to be looking at crowdfunding campaigns that are completing their funding between May 30th and June the 5th. I only have 3 campaigns to talk about this video, so it's going to be a shorter video, and I have no games to talk about that I've personally played. I haven't played anything since the last video. So thank you very much for being here. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's get right to it. The first campaign on the list this week is called Anunnaki, Dawn of the Gods. Now this came in with a minimum required funding goal of $129,000. They're currently at $192,000, which is about 1.5 times that minimum required funding goal. Anunnaki is going to complete its funding on Tuesday, May 31st. This is a game for 1 to 4 players. Games typically play in 1 to 2 hours. Complexity on the game is medium heavy, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium high. Now this is a 4X game, which means explore, exploit, expand, and exterminate. It's also set in a dystopian world, but in an ancient dystopian world, kind of an alternate history. So it's going to be combining both fantasy and science fiction tropes. It's co-designed by Simone Luciani, who's given us such games as Barrage, Grand Austria Hotel, Lorenzo il Magnifico, Zolkin the Mayan Calendar, and the Voyages of Marco Polo, as well as Danilo Sabia, who designed the game Wendake. The art is by Paolo Vicenzi and Jara Zambrano, and the game is being published by Cranio Creations, who have published Barrage, Lorenzo il Magnifico, and Newton. Now, interestingly enough, there is the base game and 3 different expansions that are available throughout this campaign, but none of the expansions seem to be available as add-ons, meaning you're going to have 4 different pledges, the base game, and then a pledge with 1, 2, and 3 expansions, and it's up to you to determine the correct pledge, and later on, I think in the Pledge Manager, you'll be able to pick from which expansions you want in that pledge. If for some reason at the end of the campaign you decided that you pledged improperly, maybe you pledged for the base game with 1 expansion and you decide you want all of them, you should be able to just change your pledge at that point to the pledge that includes 3 expansions. But it does not look like you'll be able to add in expansions as add-ons. You're just going to have to choose the appropriate pledge and then pick those add-ons. There are going to be more add-ons available in the Pledge Manager, but I'll talk about those after I get through the individual pledge levels. So the first pledge level is $85. It's for the base game, and that is just going to include the base game. The next pledge level is $115. That is the base game plus 1 expansion. And that's exactly as it sounds. You're going to be able to choose from one of the 3 expansions. And we'll go over those in just a minute as well. It's $145. That is for the base game and 2 expansions. And the final pledge level is for $166. That is for the base game and all 3 expansions. Okay, so what are these expansions and how do you know which one to choose? Let's go over exactly what they are and what they do. First up, you've got Origins of the Gods, which is going to come with 8 replayable scenarios. It sounds a little bit like it's the campaign version of the game, but it's not a campaign. They're all one-offs. Nevertheless, that is the way to get individual scenarios that you can play into your game, this expansion. So 8 replayable scenarios and also 7 reward packs that will come with asymmetric rewards that once you've played it, you've beaten that module, you'll earn that reward, and then you can throw those rewards into future games. So if you want more variability for the game, you want to be able to play the game with various kinds of goals and things, and then this is the expansion for you. The second expansion is called Journeys of the Gods. It's going to have a new house, which is basically a new playable faction, as well as the ability to add a 5th faction into your game. So this is essentially the 5th player expansion, and it comes with a new house, a new faction to give you that ability. But it also comes with the components and the things to be able to put a 5th player into the game. There's also some other extras to give more variability to the game, along with that 5th player expansion and an extra faction itself. Finally, there's Fall of the Gods. That's going to come with an additional house. At that point, you'd have well, if you got everything, you'd have 6 different factions and the ability to play with 5 of them, so it will give you a little more ability in terms of which faction you're choosing. It's also going to come with 6 mythical beasts that can be utilized in the game, and something called prelude cards, which will allow you to start the game up with asymmetrical bonuses, abilities, powers for each of the factions that you're playing with. So it'll just give you some asymmetrics, it'll make your games different. Now there are add-ons for language kits, and those are all free. So the base game is in English by default. If you would like a language kit that upgrades the game to French, Dutch, Italian, or Spanish, you can add that on for free. As I've mentioned before, it doesn't look like the individual expansions are going to be added on. You will just need to choose the appropriate pledge level and then pick the expansions that you want. And if you've made an error when you first pledged, if things have changed, if you've decided, oh, I want all 3 expansions instead of just the base plus 1 expansion that I originally pledged for, then you'll just change your pledge to be the version with the base game and 3 expansions, and you're good to go. There are more expansions for a lot of other Cranio games. That's going to include games like Barrage, Gollum, Maharaja, Lorenzo il Magnifico, Newton. All of those games are going to have extras that you can add on. I'm not going to go through all of them because they're actually not relevant to Anunnaki. These are for other games, and there are a lot of extras available. Some of these are things that you could have gotten in previous Kickstarters for these games. Some of them are promo packs that were only available in limited quantities, maybe at cons and things like that. This is just all of the things for these games that you may want to bling out your game a little bit or add in some extra variability that you may or may not have been able to get previously. So if any of those games are favorites of yours and you want more things for them, this is a good place to get those things. There are also additional extras for a few other games that aren't as well known as the 5 that I just mentioned, and t-shirts, and I guess as Rodney Smith says, I will leave all of that to you to discover on your own. But there's a lot of stuff. It's not necessarily directly relevant to the Anunnaki campaign, so go check it out. A lot of cool things. Something that I think I will be looking at personally as well. But I don't think that I should really go over everything in minutia right here because it isn't relevant to Anunnaki. Now, continental US shipping has been estimated in 3 different groupings, $10, $13, and $18. It's a little weird because we're talking about 4 different pledges. What those shipping estimates are referring to is weight. So if you're shipping a package that is, I believe they have it listed in kilograms, so 0 to 1 kilograms, 1 to 3, or 3 to 5 kilograms, it will fall under the $10, $13, or $18 shipping charge. So you'll need to look at the individual things that you've added into your pledge, see how much those weigh, and then you can determine what your shipping estimate is going to be. Finally, Cranio Creations is planning on delivering Anunnaki Dawn of Gods in May of 2023. Following that, we've got a game called The Flood. This one is the highest performing campaign of this video. They started with a minimum required funding goal of $25,000. Now they're currently at $198,000, which is almost 8 times that minimum required funding goal. The Flood is going to complete its funding on Thursday, June 2nd. This is a game for 2 to 4 players. Games typically take 30 to 90 minutes. Complexity has been estimated at medium heavy, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at high because this is, in general, first for all involved: designer, artists, publisher, Kickstarter. Now, this is ostensibly a religious-themed game. The flood that they're talking about in the title is Noah and the flood, Noah's Ark, and in the game, players are going to be trying to build up little individual arcs. If you get the Kickstarter version, you're going to have an actual arc miniature for your faction, and you're trying to recruit animals and get them on board your arc before the flood comes and wipes everything out. There are things in the game where players can ride woolly mammoths or dinosaurs. Dinosaurs and human beings did not exist at the same time, so that seems to take the religion theming of this game and just shoot it off into, I don't know, science fantasy or something. So if you're looking at this as a religion themed game, I think you have to take it with a huge grain of salt when you've got dinosaurs and people in the same game. Take that for what you will. You know, maybe you just want something that's fun and plays kind of fast and loose with your religious themes. But if you're looking at this as a game to represent religion in a realistic way, this is not going to be it. The game's designers are Elijah Morar, Natalie Morar, and Ivan Tarasiak. And the artists are Ludwik Luzasuski, Ben Mayer, Mirko Paganesi, who's the only artist on this who's worked on other games, and he's worked on Doomtown Reloaded, Dungeon Twister, and The Princess of Florence, and finally, Elif Siebenpfeifer. The game's being published by Bedouin Games, and again, this is their first published game and their first Kickstarter. Now, there are 3 different pledge levels for this one. For $55, you can pledge the standard version of the game. For $85, you can pledge the deluxe version of the game, and that's going to add 2 things into your pledge, some Ark miniatures, and the Beasts module. And then if you pledge at the $149 pledge level, which is the all-in, you're going to add 3 more items into your pledge level: metal coins, a game mat, and Raising Waters, which is the 5 to 6 player expansion for the game. If you'd like to add some of these things separately as add-ons, then for $30, you can add on Raising Waters, the 5 to 6 player expansion. For $10, you can add on metal coins, but be aware there are only 15 metal coins, so you're paying $10 for 15 metal coins. For $20, you can add on the Beasts module, but be forewarned, if you get the 5 to 6 player expansion, then you will also need to add on the $10 Beasts module for the 5 to 6 player expansion. So if you're thinking about playing this game with 5 to 6 players and you want to use the Beast module, you're going to need to spend a total of $30 to upgrade the Beast module for all 5 to 6 players. Finally, you can add on a game mat for $45. There are 2 different ones to choose from. One of them is a little bit smaller and it has 4 colors on the mat, and then there is a larger mat. So it's bigger in size, but it has less colors. It only has 2 colors. So either you want, the brighter, more colored mat that's a bit smaller, or you want the bigger mat with fewer colors on it. Shipping in the continental US is being estimated at either $17 or $25. I believe that $17 estimate is for both the standard and the deluxe version, and then the $25 estimate is for the all-in that's going to include some things like the playmat, which is going to require more shipping, and metal coins that are heavier. Finally, Bedouin Games is currently planning on delivering the Flood in June of 2023. That brings us to our final campaign of the video. This is for the Artemis project, Satellites and Commanders. They had a minimum required funding goal of $20,000. They're currently at $34,000, which, like our first campaign, Anunnaki, is about 1.5 times that minimum required funding goal. So both of these campaigns seem solid in terms of their funding, but they're not doing insane high multiplicator business. Satellites and Commanders is going to complete its funding on Friday, June 3rd. This is a game for 1 to 5 players, typically plays in about 60 to 75 minutes. Complexity is medium heavy, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium high. Now, thematically, the Artemis project is a dice placement, worker placement game set on another planet where players have different factions. They're competing with each other, trying to colonize this new planet. This is an expansion, Satellites and Commanders, and what it is adding are the satellites, which are going to be extra worker placement areas that will exist off the main board, but places that you can go and take actions, as well as commanders, which are going to function as colonists. That's something that players use in the game, but they will be more variable and more powerful versions of colonists. The expansion is designed by Daniel Rochi, who designed the original The Artemis Project base game, as well as a game called Bomb Squad Academy. The art is by Christian Romero, and the game is being published by Grand Gamers Guild. They have previously published The Artemis Project, Endangered, and Endeavor Age of Sail. This is a very simple campaign. There are 3 different pledge levels, no add-ons, so you just need to pledge for what it is that you want. The first pledge level is $30. It's called the Satellites and Commanders expansion. It's just going to get you the new expansion. For $99, you can pledge Satellites and Commander expansion plus Galileo. That's going to give you the new expansion plus the base game, the Artemis Project. And Galileo essentially refers to the Kickstarter version of the Artemis Project. So it's going to get you the nicer, more blinged out version of the game that was originally available on Kickstarter, and not just the retail version of that game. Finally, for $179, you can pledge Satellites and Commanders expansion, plus Galileo, plus the Artemis Odyssey. Now, the Artemis Odyssey is kind of in the same IP. It's related in terms of its theming, but it's a separate game, and it's actually a new version of a Bruno Faidutti game called Ad Astra. So it's been rethemed for the Artemis Project universe. It's been renamed the Artemis Odyssey, and that's available at the highest pledge level, along with the base game for the Artemis Project, the Galileo version, and the new expansion for that game. So it's a separate game, it's its own game, and you'll get it if you pledge at the highest pledge level. Continental shipping in the US is being estimated at $12, $19, and $25. Each of those estimates is for each of the 3 pledge levels. Finally, Grand Gamers Guild is planning on delivering this new expansion of the Artemis Project, plus copies of the base game if you got them, plus the Artemis Odyssey in May of 2023. Now, in last week's video, I covered 5 different games. One of them I was really curious about. It was called Through Ice and Snow, but I did not end up backing it. I just have too many games that I'm backing right now, and I have to draw the line somewhere. I know a friend of mine, his name is Ethan, is backing Through Ice and Snow, so I'm very much looking forward to playing his copy when he gets it. If I love it, hopefully they'll do another Kickstarter in the future, or there'll be some way that I can acquire it on my own and bring it into my collection. But I didn't back it. I'm regretting it a little bit, but I already have far too many games, and I'm always trying to draw lines, and I have way too many games that I've backed this month. So Through Ice and Snow did not make the cut, even though I really looked at it closely and I was very close to backing it. So the only campaign that I backed from last week's video was Thunderstone Quest Deepwood Defenders, and the reason that I backed that one is I own the base game, I own all of the things made previously for Thunderstone Quest, and it is one of my favorite 2 deck builders, the other one being Aeon's End. So in my mind, in terms of the best, more or less straight deck builders, that means I'm not talking about games like Lost Ruins of Arnak or Dune Imperium, where they use deck building along with other mechanics. I'm talking about games that are pure deck builders. So the deck building is front and center, and if there happen to be other mechanics in these games, they support the deck building. So among those types of games, my favorites are Thunderstone Quest and Aeon's End. So for me, it was kind of a no-brainer. Of course, I'm going to back 2 more quests for Thunderstone Quest, keeping in mind, though, it was by a newer designer in the series. His name was Brett Setkowiak. So when I get that campaign and those quests, I'll need to play them and see what I think about them. And if I really like them, then I suppose I may be on board for more quests in Thunderstone Quest by other designers other than Mike Elliott. So if they're going to keep branching it out to more designers, I think this one will determine my willingness to back more stuff by other designers, especially if I don't know them. If I really don't like it, I can always sell these quests off and then just make the determination that everything that's been produced for Thunderstone Quest previously up to this point in time is my game, and that's kind of the end of it. So new designer doing some new quests for Thunderstone Quest. We'll have to see what they're like and how they play, and that'll probably determine for me if I kind of put the line down and say, okay, Thunderstone Quest for me, it now is done here. We'll see, but it is one of my favorite 2 deck builders. I really love it, and so I hope it's successful, and I hope they're able to continue on making more good quests for Thunderstone Quest. Finally, I got 3 new games in this period. The first one is Carnegie Deluxe Edition. This is a heavy Euro. It's designed by Xavier George, who designed a game called Trois that I really, really don't like. It's in my top 5, maybe 10 most disliked games. However, the art on Carnegie is by Ian O'Toole, who's perhaps my favorite board game artist of all time. So it's like there was a designer that I'm not a huge fan of and an artist that I love, and I ended up backing the campaign because I like the theme. It is a heavy euro, and it's based very much on Andrew Carnegie, who was a very famous American industrialist. But in addition to having a lot of money and an industrial empire, he also put a lot of money into philanthropy. So this game sees players trying to balance their kind of material, capitalistic success with their industrial pursuits, as well as philanthropic goals. And I really found the idea of that fascinating and compelling, and a different twist on these kinds of Euro games. And in general, I just find Carnegie himself fascinating and compelling. So for me, it was the theme and the artist that got me to back this one. And I'm hoping that I like this designer's game better than some of his other games. He also did Black Angel, which has some comparisons to Troyes. I haven't played Black Angel because I just like Troyes so much, but I figure for other people out there, they may know him from Black Angel. So same designer, but I backed Carnegie Deluxe. It finally showed up. Looking forward to playing it. I also got On Mars Alien Invasion, which is the latest campaign from Vital Lacerda. Well, he's had one since then, Weathering Machine. Still waiting for that one. But this one is an expansion for On Mars, and it has several different gameplay scenario type modules that you can use, and they're for all different kinds of player counts. At least one of them is a cooperative scenario. I know there's a solo game in there. So it's just different ways that you can mix up On Mars at different player counts, playing around with both competitive and cooperative modes. I love Vital Lacerda. He's my favorite designer. On Mars for me is one of his top 3 games. So this was something that I was very interested in bringing more variability and life into one of the top 3 games by my favorite designer. Easy back for me. Finally, I received The Reckoners, the base game, as well as the new Steelslayer expansion. I went all in on this one. This is a game that is themed after the Brandon Sanderson novels. Now, he's been having a lot of Kickstarter success lately. He did his own Kickstarter for a new series of 4 books that went off really, really well. He also had Stonemaier Games put out a game, I think last year, perhaps the year before, called Red Rising, which was basically taking the game Fantasy Realms and retheming it around another series of Brandon Sanderson books and adding on some extra mechanics. Now, for my money, Fantasy Realms is still the superior game. So if you don't require that Brandon Sanderson theme, I would still guide people to not go for Red Rising, but instead go for Fantasy Realms. Now, The Reckoners is a superhero-themed game based on Sanderson's book series. Players are going to be working together in this cooperative puzzle using resources and their various skill sets and powers, and they will need to take down other smaller baddies, bad guys, to get powerful enough and to break through the big bad's defenses in order to then take him down. I've heard a lot of good things about this one. It has some really cool art, really thematic table presence, and I like superhero games in general. I like cooperative puzzle games, and I'm always looking to sort of refine my collection down to the best of them. So we'll have to see how this one plays and how it works and whether it's going to be a keeper in my collection, but I've heard a lot of good things, and I wanted to acquire a copy, play it, have my own experience with it, and decide if it's a keeper or not. So those were the 3 games that I acquired in my collection this period, and that brings us to the end of the video for this week. Thank you very much for watching and spending some time with me. If you're interested in any of the 3 campaigns that I talked about that are currently running and will complete their funding this week, as always, you can go down into the description section, click on the link next to that game, and it will take you right over to that campaign. All 3 campaigns this week are running on Kickstarter, so there are no GameFound campaigns in this week's lineup. I'll be back within a week with another video, and I know some of the games that I'm looking at for next week are going to include things like Trailblazer, the John Muir Trail, The Breach, Kabuto Sumo, Total Mayhem, Microcosmos, Union Stockyards, and Batman Gotham City Chronicles Season 3 and RPG. So those are 6 games that I will be looking at and including in next week's video. I think the 2 that are the biggest question marks as to whether or not that I'm going to include them right now are Microcosmos and Union Stockyards. Also, while I didn't play any games this last week, I have a game day tomorrow with some friends. We're going to be playing Bonfire again. I'll be playing Praga Caput Regni for the first time. And if we have time, we may also play Ride the Rails for the first time. So that's going to check off at least another game or two on my list of the 2020 games that I need to complete before I can produce my top 30 games of 2020. I'm down to 6 games right now. By next week, I should be hopefully down to 4. Also next week, during the week, I may play with my fiance, Kristen, such games as The Loop. Maybe we'll play another couple scenarios in that cooperative game, a very small card game called Strawberry Sunset. It's possible I may play either Bonfire or Luna with her. And we may play a game called Fujikuro Deluxe. So I have a lot of really cool games I may be playing over the course of the next week. I hope you get to play some really cool games as well. And I'll see you back here within a week to let you know what I did end up playing and what I thought about those games. In the meantime, have a great week, take care, and I'll see you all very, very soon.